Well, Paul, it's so exciting to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Roger, as always.
I am so excited because hypnosis is one of those things that is very exciting and often a mystery for individuals, because they go, oh, I've seen hypnosis, but only, on TV where somebody makes you do something, which is, I think, stage hypnosis is what we call it.
That's
so let's start there. What's the whole deal with hypnosis? What is it? What's actually happening?
Well, you're right. It's sort of shrouded in mystery, and it's been around for a long time. A lot of people have seen stage hypnotists, comedy shows where people, dance like a ballerina. And I used to do that years ago, back in the 90s. I was a comedy hypnotist. But hypnotherapy is where you use hypnosis to help somebody overcome a problem. And it works incredibly well. There are tens of thousands of studies into hypnosis. And the two things that we know, if you look at the overview, is firstly, it works. It works for most people most of the time in changing behaviors. Losing weight, quitting smoking, overcoming phobias, becoming confident, sleeping well, the sort of things that people use hypnosis for. And also it's safe. It doesn't have side effects. So it's really a fantastic tool to help people change their lives for the better.
So taking one step further, what is happening when somebody is in a hypnotic state or is in hypnosis? What's really that we are doing here?
Okay, so generally, hypnosis is associated with relaxation. And people, they ask, is somebody asleep when they're hypnotized? Now, for most people, that isn't the case. They're in a daydream. They're in a state of concentration. Mm-hmm. And what's happening is, in that state of relaxed concentration, you can imagine a better future, or you can imagine life without cigarettes, or you can imagine losing weight, yeah? And so for something to happen in the real world, it has to happen in the imagination first. So we can achieve all the things that we do with hypnosis without using a hypnotic trance. It's just the hypnosis allows it to happen real quick. I mean, I've had people say to me, like there was a guy who lost 300 pounds using my weight loss system. And he said to me, it was like a switch was flipped in my head, and suddenly I just didn't want to overeat. And I've heard this a lot from people. They say, suddenly when I closed my eyes and relaxed, I just knew it was all going to be okay, that something inside me changed. So for a long time, people thought it was like a magic power. Now, it's not a magic power, but the results you get can be magical.
That's amazing. And so if I'm understanding this right, you're saying in a state of hypnosis, a person relaxes and focuses on one singular item. And because our focus is intensified, that switch that needs to be flipped flips.
That's right. So when you're like in what we would call a waking state like that right now, we're aware of lots of different things. Mm-hmm. When you're hypnotized, you tend to focus on one thing to the exclusion of all others. Now, you could say that that's similar to watching television. When you're watching TV, you forget about the sofa, you forget about the carpet, and you suspend disbelief. And if something exciting happens on the screen, you get excited. If something romantic happens, you feel those romantic feelings. In the same way, a hypnotist is guiding somebody into a relaxed state of focus, whereby they can imagine a better life, or if you like, they can offer them a hypnotic suggestion, right? Mm-hmm. So about half of what we do each day is a habit, right? So think, and this is good, right? So we don't think, shall I brush my teeth this morning or shall I tie my shoelaces? You just do it, yeah? Mm-hmm. Once upon a time, you had to learn how to do that. And then you store, if you like, the program for the habit in your unconscious mind. So when you come to see a door, you don't have to think, how do I open it? You just do it automatically. You get into an automobile, you really had to think about it when you were learning. Mm-hmm. Now you just get in and think, where do I want to go? Mm-hmm. And what's really neat is hypnosis can communicate with the unconscious mind that drives all our habits. So for example, people pick up dysfunctional habits, like they might smoke or vape, they might overeat, they might drink too much, they might not sleep properly, they might be frightened of public speaking, they're worried that they're going to be judged. And these things hold people back or certainly take away from their quality of life. And using hypnotherapy, we can change that. We can make it very quickly that suddenly people, they begin to lose weight, or they quit smoking, or they feel confident when they're talking to an audience like they're talking to their best friends.
Let's break this down a little bit so we can really understand how this is happening, because here is what I'm hearing as of now. moving around in life, or in life, something happens in my life, I pick up a habit. A habit could be I have a camera or a mic on, and I go, oh, damn, I can't do this, right?
Yeah.
It could be anxiety, fear, concern, whatever that might be. And that may have just subconsciously gone to planted in me because of an event that happened in my life.
Yeah.
Now I meet Paul, and Paul says, all right, I'm going to put you in a hypnotic state. And as you're in the hypnotic state, I'm going to get you to focus on that event or focus on something and change the meaning of the story.
Yeah.
And I flip a switch, and next time I'm in front of camera, I don't even experience that anxiety.
right.
Is that what's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So say, for example, you were anxious public speaking. What I would get you to do is to remember times you felt confident, right? So when you're speaking with your friends, you're not worried about being judged. And I would create what we call an anchor, a switch for that. And what I do is switch that on, so when you go out to talk to people you don't know, you feel that connection and that confidence that you feel when you're talking to your friends. You know, another example might be this. You might pick up a negative behavior or suggestion early in life, particularly in the first 7 years of our life. The really big experiences, the ones with emotional intensity and the things that we're told over and over again by authority figures shape us, right? I think it was Aristotle who said, give me the boy before he's 7 and I'll show you the man. So years ago, this guy came to see me, and every time he started to get successful, he would sabotage it. And he knew he was doing it. And he just go, I can't believe I blew it. I blew it again. So he came to see me and said, I'm sabotaging my success. And I wouldn't do it like this now, but back in the 1980s, I was an old school hypnotherapist. So I put him into a trance and I said, go to the point when this happened. And what happened was, when he was a kid, he'd said to his mother, when I grow up, I want to be successful. And she said to him, ooh, son, you don't want to be successful. Successful people, they have heart attacks, right? Now, the thing is, there is no logic in that. But the unconscious mind is not logical, it's purposeful. And its purpose is survival. So this suggestion said, with emotional intensity by an authority figure, went bam into his mind with the power of a hypnotic suggestion. So what I did was I just pulled that suggestion from his mind and imagined him being successful. And of course, he went on to great success in the end.
That's amazing. So tell me, you said you wouldn't do it like this anymore.
Yeah.
So what would be the new way of doing it?
Yeah, so the new way I do it is like this. I get say there's a part, somebody wants to be successful. Maybe they want to be in a relationship. Maybe they want to lose weight. Or maybe they don't want to be shy anymore, something like that. But there's another part that stops them, that either sabotages or gives them imposter syndrome. They don't feel worthy, or it holds them back, yeah? And usually, in fact, not usually, all the time, I should say, this part has a positive intent, right? The part that's sabotaging and holding back wants to protect the person, but it's just overprotecting them. See, one of the reasons why the biggest phobia in the Western world is the fear of public speaking. You stand up in front of the class, you read out loud, someone points out your mistakes, and people giggle. So people get nervous that they're going to be in a humiliating situation like that. So one part of them wants to speak, but another part doesn't want them to be criticized or look foolish. So it stops them, it makes them shy, it holds them back. So what you do is you get the two parts together like this. This is a great technique developed by my friend Richard Bandler. And what he did is he gets the two parts to fulfill their positive intent. And when they can both do that, so you can be confident and outgoing, but at the same time, you can still protect yourself from doing something foolish. And when they integrate, he puts them together like that, and bam, both parts simultaneously work together. And so, what used to take, a long time can be done very quickly. I mean, look, if you remember, a cell phone back in the 80s was like the size of a brick, right? Like this. And all it could do is make calls. Nowadays, a modern cellular telephone is like the size of a bar of chocolate, and you can get access to all information in the world. You can have your music, your office, your life on your phone. In the same way, psychological technology, modern hypnotherapy, has made this massive quantum leap in the last sort of 20 years. Now we are able to, like it used to take 6 months to cure a phobia. Now a phobia is hardly 60 minutes. So in the same way that digital technology is changing the world, psychological technology in the form of modern hypnotherapy is changing it too.
If I'm hearing this right, so if somebody makes a decision today to say, hey, listen, I want to change X behavior for me or Y behavior, and it could be related to food or success or failure, however it is, and whatever's blocking them, and they believe that that's something that they need to change. With hypnotherapy, most of these situations can be handled within the frame of 60 minutes or so.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of hypnotherapists just do 60-minute sessions. Now, it isn't that everyone is cured in 60 minutes. What we find is that most people get cured most of the time, or successfully treated, if you like, using hypnotherapy. Is particularly good for behavioral changes, losing weight, quitting smoking, becoming confident, sleeping well, overcoming anxiety, fears and stuff like that. Yeah. So the thing is that most people, most of the time, yes, in one session, can get an extraordinary breakthrough, but sometimes it takes several sessions and you have to reinforce it. I've found that over the years, some people come in and bam, they never smoke again. Then other people, they quit smoking, but they go through a crisis and they return to their old friend a cigarette to try and calm them down. So then you have to go back and do the process again. But, life is like that.
Yeah, okay, cool. So one more thing. So now I'm going to turn a little bit more towards situations that I feel are more not that they're more challenging, but seems like it's more challenging for a lot of people.
Yeah.
While there are behavior changes which are important, but seem like, okay, smoking, it's a small element, it feels like one thing to change. But what if somebody is like, dude, like I always keep sabotaging my career, or I make money, I lose money, or I get good at my relationships and then I run away from them, Like, what about those kind of long-term changes?
Those are great examples. Like, so for a long time, I used to sabotage myself in a relationship, right? Because early on in my dating history, I'd had my heart broken a couple of times. And so basically a part of me goes, I want to be in a relationship. I want to be happy. I want to have love and companionship and all of this great stuff that a relationship brings. But another part of me went, ooh, last time we fell in love, we got hurt. We're not letting that happen again. So I basically kept dating the same kind of person and it ended in the same way. And one of my friends said, there's a common denominator here, Paul. It's you. So I did some work on myself, and bingo. I mean, I'm not just married; I'm happily married. I'm happy to say. The same with financial success, or say something like you mentioned, something like weight loss or smoking. See, basically, everyone in the world is changing how they feel by external means. Drinking, drug taking, gambling, sex, shopping, and food, particularly sugar food, the world's sort of drug of choice, right? And, it's okay to change your feelings, but if you're doing that excessively and it's affecting your health, because smoking definitely calms people down, it's just got a massive negative long-term health consequence. So what you do is you find other ways to get the benefits. So say, for example, somebody is eating on their feelings. They're anxious and they're emotional, and they're using food not because they're hungry, but to change how they feel. What you do is you teach them to have more control over their feelings so they don't need to overeat, to emotionally eat. And, if there was one gift I could give to the entire planet, it would be the ability to become relaxed at will. To just suddenly go into a very relaxed state of mind, a relaxed alertness where you don't lose control, but you're just in this really great place where you don't feel emotionally overwhelmed and you can make good decisions.
So I want to take a deeper dive in that, because what I experience, or what I'm definitely present to as a challenge in society right now, it seems to me at least, or maybe that's the people that I hang out with. It's very possible I have a myopic view on this, but it seems like relationships is one of the bigger crises that is in society right now, especially people in their 30s. It tends to be that more and more people find it hard and hard to be in a relationship, stay in a relationship. And there was a friend of mine who told me this quote where they said it's chic to be divorced in 30s right now. Some celebrity said it. It's chic. And while I understand there was an attempt at humor, it somewhat communicates the state of society where we think it's okay. And it is okay if it was a terrible relationship, probably, but it also seems like there's a lack of understanding and lack of trust, or whatever that is. I don't know what it is really. If there was somebody that's listening right now and going, I am in crisis of relationship. It feels like I always find the wrong person. Seems like that's a trend. If I always end up in these relationships, that seems like I'm dating the same person, just a different body. And for whatever reason, I can't trust the relationship. I can't be in one. I can't sustain it. what would be some, of course, there's a whole thing that they can hire a hypnotherapist, specially trained by us if they would want, and that would definitely help. But say that was not a possibility in this moment because we are having a quick conversation here. What would be some of the ideas or things or perspectives that you would want to offer to them?
Okay, there was an amazing study done a few years ago, and they found that people that were married were happier than people who weren't married, right? Generally speaking, right? This is not true for everyone, but generally. And so the original conclusion from the study was marriage makes you happy, right? But because it's what's called a longitudinal study, they were able to gather more data. And what they found out was when people are happy in themselves, they're more able to have a functional relationship with somebody else. Now, when we grow up, it's like we're watching a training video, right? You know, daddy behaves like this, mummy behaves like this. Yep. And usually what happens is we end up dating within that sort of template, if you like. And, you know, so sometimes people go, I'm never dating anyone else like this again, and they switch and they become the other person, right? and it's the weirdest thing. I mean, there's another saying, which is we seek the teeth that made the wounds. And so very, you know, my dating history was I got hurt a couple of times, and even though consciously I really wanted to fall in love and find the right person, my unconscious mind was going, I don't think so, you know, and also it was seeking the teeth that made the wound. So I would keep finding the same kind of person. It would end in the same kind of way. And it was only really when, as I say, somebody pointed out to me, there's a common denominator. Basically, all change begins with you, right? So when you go to see a hypnotherapist, it's really about changing your relationship to life, right? Making it better. You've got to be clear about what it is you want. You know, if you're not clear about what it is you want in life, it's a bit like setting off in a boat without a rudder. I mean, you could end up anywhere. So I think having a clear idea is very important. Also, I think what it is you want should come from your values, those things that are most important to you. You know, people say to me, when I ask them, what do you want? They'll go, I want money. And I'll say, right, what will the money give you, get for you, do for you? And they'll go, it will give me a feeling of security. I go, so security is the value, yeah? And so I always go to the value. I find out those things that are most, so my values personally would be health, got to be there, top of the list, right? It's things like freedom. Do I get to choose, you know, mostly what I do each day? It's love, you know, do I feel loved? You know, do I love my friends, my family, my dog, etc.? Do I experience love every day? So even though I have goals, if I can tick the box each day and go, do I feel loved? Do I feel healthy? Do I feel freedom? Did I get to do what I want today? Did I do something creative? Did I laugh? You know, etc. My life is worthwhile because I'm living a value-driven life. And I think also it's got to be about purpose. The famous psychiatrist Viktor Frankl said, purpose is the cornerstone of good mental health. And, you know, I've seen people who, you know, suddenly lose their purpose. I mean, particularly during the pandemic, it was really weird because people couldn't make plans because, you know, the rules kept changing, right? People who are normally super focused lost their sense of purpose, and they would say to me, I've got no motivation. I don't know what's happened to me. And I went, it's because you couldn't make plans. You got out of the habit of making plans. And of course, the other thing nowadays, Ajit, is that, you know, you turn on the TV or you open a newspaper, you're under attack. It's the war. It's the virus. It's the economy. It's you know, somebody or other. And so people have become very good at catastrophizing. And so we see a lot of anxiety now. In fact, if I talk to my friends who are hypnotherapists and I say, what's the main thing you're treating people for? They'll say it's either anxiety or something related to it. People are not sleeping because they're anxious. And there just seems to be so much stress, so much unnecessary anxiety in the world. There's a great saying by Mark Twain, which is, I've been through some terrible experiences in my life, and some of them actually happened.
And that is so true. We catastrophize, like you said, in our minds. We make the worst of the situation that may not ever happen. And I think that's where self-hypnosis becomes a really powerful tool. And in our trainings, as we train individuals in Mind Valley, Paul McKenna hypnotherapy, or becoming a hypnotherapist using your technology and your methodology, we found a lot of people join the program, not necessarily to go out in the world and help other people, but to help themselves.
Yeah.
Because all of these things that we talk about, relationships, money, or food, health, whatever, vitality, anxiety, all seem to be so dominant that if you could learn a tool that you could just use for yourself yourself, because you understand yourself pretty well, or at least hope to understand yourself pretty well, it could really be a powerful thing. So let's talk a little bit about self-hypnosis. How is it? What is it? And can it be useful for an individual?
Oh, yes. It's very, very useful. In fact, anyone who's successful will go through some sort of process of imagining and planning and, visualizing and thinking about how they're going to do something, whether they're a champion athlete, whether they're a performer, whether they're a business CEO. Everybody does some strategic planning. Mm-hmm. Now, when you do that in a very relaxed state of mind, it's pretty similar to self-hypnosis. Mm-hmm. So, for example, say you want to make a creative business decision. It's a good idea to get relaxed and imagine. This is how I do any goal setting, right? Is I go out into the future in my mind and I imagine what it's going to be like. What will I see? What will I hear? How will I feel when I've achieved my goal? Mm-hmm. Then I do what we call an ecology check. So ecology is really the study of consequences. And so I go, in achieving this goal, is it going to affect my health? Or am I going to upset people? Or is there too much risk or whatever? So I first of all check the integrity of the goal. Then I also think about what's going to get in the way, what's going to stop me, so I can head those things off at the pass. And then what I do is I back engineer. I go, well, I've achieved my goal. What happened just before that? What happened just before that? What happened just before that? Until I'm back here to now. Mm-hmm. And now I've got a clear pathway to seeing my goals. This is why most people fail at New Year's resolutions, because they're not goals, they're wishes. They go, oh, I wish I'd lost 30 pounds, or I wish I could quit smoking, or I wish, or whatever. If all we had to do was wish, we'd all be living in mansion houses, with fabulous lovers and jewelry and driving big cars, or whatever it is that people wish for. So I suppose when I'm helping somebody using hypnotherapy, and particularly it's self-hypnosis, it's a tool. It's a something I use each day. Firstly, for relaxation, right? So I have ADHD. I think real fast, and one of the things is that means that I can get stuff done real quick, and I can think about several things simultaneously. Mm-hmm. But if I'm sitting there on the couch and I'm all wound up because my brain is going too fast, it annoys my wife. So what I do is I slow my mind down and I get calm. And I feel real good, yeah. So a lot of people use hypnosis, self-hypnosis, to be creative, to plan things. They use it to sometimes just make a change. They'll just put a suggestion in and go, hey, I want to stop drinking vodka. Or, hey, I want to stop smoking. Sometimes it can be as quick as that, as simple as that, right? Mm-hmm. And then other times you have to visualize it over and over again. I remember once talking to Olympic gold medalist athlete, and he said, I'm not really into all this, psychology, sports psychology stuff, Paul. I think it's all a bit woo-woo. I said, do you ever think about a race before you run it? He went, every single step, over and over and over again. I went, well, that's kind of what I do and what people like me do, When I go into corporations sometimes, they'll say to me, we really like you to do some motivational work, but perhaps maybe no hypnosis. And so I say, do you ever go off into the future in your management sessions and imagine what your products and services will be like in the future and what your competitors will be doing? Yes, strategic planning. I go, it's kind of the same as self-hypnosis, right? Yeah. It's just usually when we bring the H word in, people, they worry that perhaps it's mind control, but actually it's about giving you more control over your mind. If you wake in the middle of the night and you're all wound up about something, wouldn't it be neat to be able to slow your thoughts down, get relaxed, and just go back to sleep? If you're about to give a performance, again, some of my friends who are, rock stars or movie stars, they, before they go on the set or before they walk on the stage, they put themselves into a relaxed, alert kind of, so they call it the zone, or musicians call it being in the groove, yeah. Mm-hmm. And again, that's a form of self-hypnosis, being able to go into those peak states of performance when you want to.
That's amazing, and I love the line that you said. It's not mind control; it's controlling your mind. Mm-hmm. It is so powerful, and I can see that especially powerful because with more distractions, I feel like we all have a little bit of ADHD at this point. I mean, it's exactly. Like we could just globally say we all are ADHD to at least some degree, if not completely, because there's so much that's happening in our lives at all times. that I feel like the tool that you just talked about might be the most powerful tool a person can use.
Yep.
So can we talk a little bit more in context of ADHD,
Yep.
or in context of somebody who has a hyperactive mind, or has thoughts running and pacing, and it creates the anxiety that we talk about, or it creates these multiple plans, which tends to be the tendency of a lot of our students, where they have 17,000 plans and they are not executing onto even one of them because they have 17,000 of them.
Yeah.
So what is it that you recommend that one could consider doing as they are learning the idea of hypnosis and self-hypnosis, and saying, oh, wow, this tool can really help me really calm down and really be able to focus my attention? What are some of the ideas that you have that maybe you use for yourself?
So I use self-hypnosis most days, and it could be for different reasons. But usually what I do is I start out by making a statement of intent. So I'll go, I'm going to relax now for the next 5 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it is, into a profoundly comfortable trance. And I'm going to do that to accomplish X, Y, Z. Now, it can be to solve a creative problem. Like, how am I going to finish this book I'm writing? So I close my eyes and I relax and I go off into the future and I hold the book and I get insights into what's in the book, right? Or it might be that I feel super stressed. I've just got too many things on that day, and I need to be in a relaxed, alert space in order to make good decisions rather than be reacting to things. I want to respond. So what I do is I close my eyes, I make my statement of intent, and I imagine things going really well. And I see what I'll see, and I'll hear what I'll hear, and I'll feel how good I'll feel. But I also imagine there's a challenge or two. Something goes wrong, but I'm able to handle it. So I stay in a resilient place. Resilience, actually, people think about resilience as being able to sort of tough it out. And to some extent it is that. But also resilience is about adaptability. Now there's something called the law of requisite variety, which states that the part of a system that is the most flexible will always end up in control of the system. So be it a family, a political party, a corporation, the person that's got the most flexibility can adapt to an ever-changing environment will become most powerful, right? And we've seen that in the last few years. We've all had to adapt because of the pandemic and lots of different technological changes and things that are going on. And those people that are the most adaptive have become more powerful as a result. So in a sense, using hypnotherapy builds resilience, adaptability. See, the great thing is you can try out things in your mind before you go try them out in the real world. My friend Heston Blumenthal, he decided he was going to do bacon-flavored ice cream, right? And so he just asks himself these questions. He's this genius chef, right? And he goes, what would it taste like? And he puts them together inside his mind before he goes and creates them in the real world. So I suppose, in a sense, the great thing about hypnosis is it allows you to become a designer, to interior decorate your own mind, and and to have a more lovely, peaceful set of thoughts. Because it's very easy these days, as I mentioned, because of modern media and the messaging in modern media, to think you're under attack. And to be in survival thoughts all the time. And sure, you do need to prepare for potential problems, but most people are preparing for emergencies that are never going to happen. And as a result, they're stressing themselves out. They're making themselves anxious. It's an uncomfortable place to be. I mean, we all have to experience uncomfortable emotions. The point of fear is to say, be prepared. If I'm about to step off the curb and there's a bus coming, I want the fear to pull me back and keep me alive. But I just don't want to live in fear. If somebody's mean to me, I might get angry and say, hey, don't talk to me like that. And I don't want to live in anger because it's uncomfortable. So many of the uncomfortable emotions are very useful, but we just don't want to be in them a lot of time. I want to be in relaxed alertness, in creativity, in laughter, in love, and happiness.
Yeah. No, so true. And I almost like you mentioned, your friend who created bacon flavored ice cream is self-hypnosis, or the state of self-hypnosis, is helpful not just as a coach or an educator or a hypnotherapist or whatever may be, just as a person.
Yeah.
Like as a person who has maybe a different career. You could be a CEO if you can relax yourself into this state and be able to make a conscious plan that seems more aligned, and you could do the whole thing that you were talking about, is significantly more helpful than making a plan based on anxiety. It's helpful if you were a VP of sales. It's helpful if you're a doctor. It's helpful irrespective of what career you are in. So I feel self-hypnosis is a tool that we should all be learning how to practice as the society gets more and more anxious and we get more and more anxious with the technological change that we are in right now. I mean, it feels like our careers are at threat in a way, but it feels like almost like that's the tool we should be inspiring everybody to try.
Yes, you could say that self-hypnosis is really another way of describing thinking or sophisticated thinking, right? So making good decisions is something that successful people do. You know, super successful people are professional risk takers. I remember Anita Roddick, the founder of The Body Shop. She said to me, I've never met a successful person that takes a risk. They take an educated, calculated risk, right? Richard Branson has this fantastic thing, upside, downside, right? So here's an example. Say you wanted to ask someone out on a date, right? And they might reject you. So the downside is you might feel bad for an hour or two or a day or two, right? But the upside is they might say, yes, you might have this fantastic relationship, you might meet the person of your dreams, it could be great. So when you have a very low downside and a very high upside, take action, right? If they're about the same, maybe go back and reconsider, you know, what your plan is.
That's a fantastic way to evaluate. If today you're somebody listening and watching this and trying to go, well, do I want to try self-hypnosis or not try self-hypnosis or hypnosis generally as a career or an opportunity for them, look at the upside and look at the downside. And if you see, well, the upside is this might actually work and I will finally end my ADHD, anxiety, and craziness, if I may call it that, and that ends, your upside is huge versus maybe an investment of a few $1,000s for you to learn the skill. So it's such a great way to analyze, but a lot of us kind of like over-engineer the downside and think that's like the worst case scenario is terrible versus actually looking at the upside.
Well, the upside, I mean, for being a hypnotherapist is this. The world has never needed hypnotherapists more than it needs them right now, just purely on an anxiety basis, but also on all kinds of problems, you know, overeating, smoking, vaping, drinking, you know, etc. But the average hypnotherapist makes over $100,000 a year. That's your average one, right? And the thing is that it actually, when you help somebody else, if you're a right-minded individual, it feels good, right? So people who are sociopaths, you know, which is another word for like being super selfish, right? They don't care, you know, whether they help somebody or not, 'cause it's all about them, right? But your average, normal, functional human being, when they do just some act of kindness or they help somebody with something, it feels good, it feels empowering, right? And as a hypnotherapist, you're able to help people with problems that have maybe, you know, been there all their lives or things that are holding them back. You know, I do this when I ask a group of people, I go, who here is at 100% of their true potential? And only one person has ever said yes. And that was Tyler Winklevoss, said, at this moment, I'm at 100% of my true potential, when he had just invented Facebook. So I think he was telling the truth, right? But nobody else says yes to it. And it seems to me the things that hold people back are self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, you know, fear of it being overwhelming or something like that, or just not thinking big enough, not thinking rich enough, not thinking how amazing life could be. And so as a hypnotherapist, your job really is to give people a richer life, is to give them more freedom. You know, if they can't look at a bar of chocolate without having to demolish it, the chocolate is in charge and not them, right? If they can't walk out and talk to a group of people because they're terrified what people might think of them, then they're limited in their ability to connect and communicate with people. And the great thing is hypnotherapy works, as I say, for most people, most of the time, it's safe. And it works really fast. You know, I mean, I work with people, I have been now for nearly 40 years, and I see people change in one session. You know, I remember I was doing a TV show a few years ago, and we were waiting in the green room. I was doing a spider phobia. We had a tarantula spider, and there were these two lovely ladies there. And one of them said, could you fix her problem with relationships? I went, and this is an attractive looking lady, right? And I went, sure, what's the problem? She goes, just keep dating the same kind of guys, same kind of problems. So I went, okay, so I want you to put that part of you that wants to be in a relationship in this hand, and the part of you that sabotages, that stops it, in this hand. And she went, okay. So the part that's sabotaging is trying to protect her because it doesn't want her to get hurt, but it's also stopping her from relating. And bring your hands together. And I said, now let your unconscious mind figure out how they're both going to do their positive intent, their positive job. And she went, it feels like it's possible. Bam, I integrated them. Anyway, she wrote to me a few months later. She said, I've started this relationship and it's going really well. I mean, could be a coincidence. Oh, that's nice. Then she wrote to me a few months later and she said, actually, I'm getting married. And then she wrote to me and said, I'm having a child. And she said, do you think it could have been anything to do with that process that we did that took 5 minutes? And I went, oh, maybe just a coincidence. So sometimes change can happen like that in an instant. Other times it takes a bit of time.
So Paul, I see so many use cases of self-hypnosis or hypnosis in general. But are there times when hypnosis doesn't work?
Sure. I mean, I don't know any pill or potion that works for everyone every single time. But I can count on one hand the people I have not been able to cure in the last 20 years, right? And I think, sometimes I just didn't have the skills at the time. The thing is that there are sometimes a lot of variables. The skill of the operator, the willingness of the person to participate and wanting to change, that sort of thing. But generally, what we say is there's no such thing as a resistant client. There's only an inflexible therapist, right? So if somebody has, 8 ways of trying to avoid you helping them change, you need 9 ways of persuading them, right? So, yeah, it doesn't work for everyone every single time. But we find when we do studies into people that either read my books or use one of my programs, that they work for most people most of the time. And that's a lot better than, say, traditional old-fashioned therapy, which was, it was all about analyzing everything, right? So I keep meeting these people who've been in therapy for like 10 years, right? And they can talk to you like a shrink. They'll go, I've got all this unexpressed rage towards my father, and they've rationalized everything, but it hasn't made a single bit of difference to their behavior. Whereas sometimes I don't know exactly what it is I did that worked. It just did. Because all I'm interested in is the output, is the person changing, right? This guy came to see me a few years ago, and he had insomnia. And he came back about 2 weeks later, and he said, well, it's not cured. I said, how much better is it? He says, oh, about 80% better. I went, listen to yourself. So this guy is a glass half empty, right? He's looking for where it isn't rather than where it is. And the important thing is, I think, is you get more of what you focus on in life. When people ask me, what's one piece of advice you'd give people? I'll say you get more of what you focus on. Because too many people are thinking, I wish I wasn't overweight, or I wish I wasn't shy, I wish I wasn't single, I wish I wasn't broke, and whatever, yeah? And they're not thinking in terms of what it is they do want. Sure, you've got to know what it is you don't want so you can move away from it, right? But I like to think about what it is I do want, or think about things I don't want to have happen, bad health, or I don't want this particular issue or problem. But I generally think in terms of what it is I want, and I think about it over and over and over again. And what that does is in a way, it sort of organizes all of your thinking, all of your behavior, all of your energy as well. Because everything, this table, you, me, etc., are atoms and molecules vibrating at a density and frequency. So essentially the whole universe is made of energy, right? And the way that we focus our energy determines the results that we get.
So beautifully put, first of all. Thank you for doing that, because I feel you when I have a lot of friends that are in therapy for 10, 20 years, and it's just insane to me. And it's not because I have anything against therapists per se, but there is, at some point, I feel like we are in this society that loves saying that they are in trauma, or somehow we have made it so cool to be like, oh yeah, I was traumatized. And I was like, yeah, but it's been 10 years, Like, I'm not saying that your trauma was not big or anything like that, but it's been 10 years. How long before we decide to move on and make a different decision?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, when I used to live in California, and, people, literally wear their therapy like a badge. I've been in therapy for 20 years. That means I'm a better person or something. Now, look, there's no doubt there's a value to getting something off your chest, right? To talking to somebody. But hey, you can go do that in a bar, right? But the therapists who I think charge a lot of money and sit and listen to your problems, it's great. It's noble that they want to help. But the modern way of doing it is hypnotherapy, right? So the first thing I ask somebody when they sit down is, what do you want, right? And they'll tell you what they don't want, I don't want this, I don't want that. I say, no, but what do you want? And, trauma is a big issue these days. But again, there are people who wear it like a medal, my PTSD is worse than yours. So I'm somehow, I'm more virtuous. I don't know what it is. Because you don't know what I've been through, And I don't want to take away from, because the last 10 years I've been working with people in trauma. War veterans, rape victims, bereavement cases, like really at the sharp end. And it's an incredibly rewarding work when you help somebody who's been in the darkest place. They cannot see any point in carrying on. They're right at the edge, and you're able to turn them around, and they go, oh my God, I've got my life back. I mean, that really is, it's a wonderful thing. And again, that's kind of the beauty of being a hypnotherapist. I say to people, it's a very rich living, in as much as, sure, you do make good money being a hypnotherapist, but the richness comes from seeing somebody change, somebody that just couldn't see a way out of this problem, or they'd been debilitated by it for years, and suddenly they're free of it. And I became interested in hypnotherapy because I was a radio broadcaster back in the 1980s. And I was working in local radio, and I went to interview the local hypnotist, right? And I'd had the most terrible day, right? I'd broken up with my girlfriend, I'd row with my boss, and the people in the apartment where I was living were making a noise and keeping me up at night. And I showed up like this, like white knuckles, And the chap said to me, look, rather than you interview me, I think I should do it to you. And I said, okay. I was benevolently skeptical. I said, knock yourself out. Right? So I sat back, I closed my eyes. And suddenly I felt very relaxed, and all my burdens and my worries just lifted like this. It was like this tension just went, and I felt this beautiful, calm stillness, and my mind slowed down, and I could suddenly see solutions to problems. I could see a way forward. The future looked bright and beautiful, and I felt calm. And I opened my eyes. It felt like it had been 5 minutes. It had been about half an hour. And I said, that is fantastic. I want to learn to do that. And so he lent me a book by Richard Bandler, who was later to become my most prolific teacher. He's the co-creator of NLP, and he's a brilliant behavioral scientist. And I read this book, and I thought, I think I know how it works. And I'd be at a party, right? And I'd say, I'm learning hypnosis. And someone would say, well, it won't work on me. And I'd say, shall we find out? And I'd have them up dancing like a ballerina, and we'd all fall about laughing, right? And so for a while, I used it for entertainment. But then I thought, people would say, could you help me quit smoking or lose weight or something? I went, yeah, I think I can. Or pass my exams, or any number of different things. And it worked most of the time. And I wasn't particularly good at it in those days. And so I became obsessed with it. I'm that sort of person. And even now I'm still learning. But the joy I get from working one-to-one with somebody is great, or working with a big group. But the most joy I get is teaching hypnotherapy, because when you teach somebody, there's that saying, give someone a fish they eat for a day, teach someone to fish they eat for life, right? It's that suddenly they've got a set of tools that means that they've gone through all kinds of changes in the process of learning hypnotherapy, but they're able to go out into the world and affect other people's lives, and it ripples out. And so it's a wonderful feeling to be able to teach somebody this extraordinary skill set, which for years was considered like voodoo. I mean, when I started doing it back in the 1980s, people were saying to me, hypnosis, wow, that's like, is it mind control, and things like that. And I said, well, it is, it's control over your own mind, the way I see it. And they'd say, is it dangerous? And I'd say, no, I've looked at the research, it's completely safe. And so it was treated with great suspicion. And I did a TV show back in the 90s, a comedy TV show. It was a very big deal. It played all over the world. It played all over Europe and America and everywhere. And then I just suddenly got to a point where I thought, I really don't want to turn someone into a ballerina anymore. I enjoy teaching it, and I would. It's funny. I was selling out stadiums, but I would sit for a weekend in a hotel room with about 10 or 12 people, and get them over their problems, make them feel better. And one of my friends said, "This makes no commercial success whatsoever. Why are you doing this?" I said, "It just feels so good. I love doing it. I actually love it. I found my thing in life. They say." Find something you love to do, you never work again. And so the thrill of being able to do hypnotherapy with people was a game changer. Became all consumed with it. And now I have the greatest job in the world. I teach hypnotherapy to people. I still occasionally work with people if I'm researching a particular area like anxiety. I was researching that recently, so I found all the most anxious people like this, and it was really interesting to find out what worked and what didn't work. Yeah. But they all got unanxious in the end, and then I turn it into a product, a book, or a course, or something like that.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And it's always great to know that the science is evolving, and you're, of course, at the forefront of that science of hypnotherapy and creating new tools or adapting the tools to the new realities of the world.
Yes.
One final question for you, Paul, and the reason why I have this question is because sometimes what I find is when I ask people, what do you want? Mm-hmm. They don't have an answer to it.
Yeah.
Right. So they don't know what they want. Mm. How do you get somebody to really decide what they want?
This is a great question. So if you put vagueness out, you'll get vague results back. So I do two processes with people. I say, go to the end, near the end of your life, and look back on it and go, what do I wish I'd done more of and less of, right? And that usually is a big insight for a lot of people. And then I say, come back with your insights, and I say, let's do it again. I want you to go to the end just near the end of your life, but this time imagine you've had the most awesome life. Mm. It's been amazing. It's been the most fantastic life. What was it that made your life so amazing? Was it the quality of relationships? Was it career? Was it things you did, or was it things you stopped doing? Was it something else? Was it family? Was it that you pursued, one of your passions or something? What made your life so fantastic? And I don't think I've ever found anyone that doesn't come back from that process with a much clearer idea about what a great life is and what it is they want.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Paul, because that one decision sometimes is the decision that one needs to make to live the life they always wanted to live, and they've been so fearful of living until now. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Arjit. As ever, real pleasure.